And I was like, no, no,
I
I'm
can't
not.
be
You
that.
know? Yeah, exactly. But she said, but think about it. If you're not grounded, if you're not rested, if you're not joyful, she said, all of
Mm.
that's vibrating out.
This call is coming from literally all over the country. Reverend Adriene is in New York. Reverend Bruce Reyes-Chow, who you're going to hear this coming Sunday at Riverside, is over in California. And I'm right here in the middle of the country. Bruce, you are in California right now, right?
I am in California right now. Yes.
Okay, good, good, good. Didn't
We're
want to
never sure where
ruin my
Bruce
little
is.
visual. Where in the world is Bruce Reyes-Chow? We'll get to
Exactly.
that
There
segment
it is.
later. But for right now, welcome back. Word Made Fresh, weekly show. Talk about upcoming lectionary texts or whatever text is being preached at Riverside. This week is off lectionary. Thanks, Bruce. And you get to know guest preachers, talk about all these things. But Reverend Bruce Reyes-Chow, you are our guest preacher this Sunday. We'll have your bio in the bulletin, but give us like the elevator speech of who are you and what have you done in the world.
And what I've done in the world that is I'm willing to have recorded and put out on the interwebs. Somebody recently I have everybody has these like canned bios that you send out, and somebody introduced me though with something totally new that I loved. So they introduced me. They said Bruce Reyes-Chow. They did a few of the things, and they said he's a convener of people, and I was like, I had not felt so seen. Like genuinely, I was like, oh. And that's how God. I like that is what I love to do. I love to just bring people together, however that happens, online, in person, whatever. And that's something I do. I happen to live in Northern California, born and raised here, Filipino Chinese, third generation, Presbyterian PC USA pastor. So I've been ordained for almost 30 years now, which seems wild to me. And yeah, write books, use my words in a variety of places. And just have the great privilege of speaking with people and hanging out and convening people together to do what I hope are powerful things focused in the areas of justice and compassion and kindness. I see a
One of
book
those
about to
books,
come out.
right here. Just you say you write books. Everything good about God is true. The newest offering from Bruce Reyes-Chow into the world. Quick, read it. Screenshot. Read the book right there. There you go. Okay. Adriene, Bruce is coming into a pulpit that you usually make space on Sundays. What should he? What do we want to hear from him as he's stepping into Riverside?
Oh. I, well, I think what's most top of mind for me is we know that Bruce has been in Palestine lately, and I think our people are going to want to hear what that was like from someone who's been on the ground in that space, and certainly talking about it all over social media, and I think very forcefully and prophetically calling people out. Even as recently as, hey, if you haven't said anything by now, it's May, you might want to say something by now. But I also think pastorally, Bruce, holding people and saying, I know you're scared, but try to say something. And here's some suggestions of things you might do. I think it's been really great. The push, the pull, the invitation. And I think we're going to want to hear about that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think one of the spaces that the lanes I try to stay in is that, like, these are my colleagues, my friends, and I know there's realities around that, and I have some privilege because I'm not serving a congregation in the same way that other folks are, but at the same time, I feel like I'm a trusted person. I'm like, okay, like you don't get a parade, but at some point, when you don't say anything at all, that what are your descendants going to say about how you were in this time? What do you want to say about yourself? And I think that's the encouragement that I want to give. But this Sunday, I just returned. I've been twice now in the last 3 months, and I just returned. It'll be a couple weeks, and then I'll be with you all. That I do. I'm clearly in a ceasefire, anti-apartheid, anti-occupation space, but at the same time, I will focus a lot on as soon as we give up seeing dignity and humanity in anyone, evil has won. And so I'll tell a couple stories about how that has been really difficult at times. So I want people to help us change policy in the U.S., but at the same time, not to the detriment of dismissing humanity and other people and what it means for us to be a prophetic voice in the midst of what is too easily divisive. And that's the kind of the place that I'll be at for this Sunday. So I hope it'll affirm some people in where they are, but also challenge in how we as Christians in particular follow Christ into the world in a way that is different. And that's where will hopefully land for everyone. We shall see.
Well, the texts you're using for the sermon that we'll hear on Sunday, we get a little bit of Matthew 4, which is Jesus calling some people to come follow him. That's Simon, also called Peter, Andrew, that whole scene, James, John, and then you're pivoting us into Romans 12, which, reflecting on what you just said about your time in Palestine, that's where it gives us many fantastic words from Paul, but including, he says, weep with those who weep. And I feel like you have embodied that so particularly well in your trips to Palestine and just all the work you continue to do and invite all of us to do. So am I reading that right? Is that going to be a turn your sermon takes, or am I just,
a little bit
doing a little eisegesis?
So the actual turn that I take on the sermon is do not repay evil with evil.
Oh, okay.
And,
whoa.
And actually that what does it mean for us to bless those who curse us? Like genuinely bless those, not just like bless your heart, bless you, but actually hope that, you grow into who God intends you to be without me determining what that is, but to really genuinely want that for other people. Because that's actually, if we can do that with our deepest enemies or those who curse what we believe, and do that without having to say we agree with them, I think that is profound. And, I think that's resurrection talk, right? That is a death of relationship into we're going to honor the life that exists in it, and hopefully there is more. So that's really where I'll take the turn, is in the do not repay evil acts with evil acts. Dun dun.
And I believe that holds this moment and this issue and so many of the volatile issues in the world so well. But I also think it is an invitation into this election season that has started, I don't know, months ago, because we're really going to be wrestling, I think, even more this time around. But in the particular as well, I think it gets at what's even happening in churches and in families around so many issues that divide us, that keep us from the table with each other. So,
yeah. I mean, as soon as we dismiss humanity and dehumanize other people, we're done almost. Like that, I'll tell a little story about when evil has won in my life, and I don't want that to happen. Like evil cannot win every day. Otherwise we're in trouble. And so, I think that is the challenge for that, following Jesus into the spaces that we don't really even know, but we know it's better than where we are now. And so, do we hold on to the security of where we are now because we know it, or do we venture into new spaces knowing that it's going to be difficult and knowing that, but not even really knowing what it is? And here are some guideposts along the way. Yeah, I've been convicted by my trips to Palestine for sure. I've been there multiple times now, but in a different way. I think in a different way these past few trips.
How would you encourage someone who just might be feeling the fatigue from the ongoing nature of this work? And you say we can't let evil win. It seems like evil's got a really big marketing budget going for it. Like, how do we? And this kind of a text, from Romans here gives us so many very clear calls to action and encouragement. But how do you rejoice in hope when it feels like it just keeps going the same way every single time? How do you even personally, 2 trips there, you've seen, experienced so much, just how faith leaders, Congress, how do we just maintain that?
These days I hate talking like I've been at this a long time, but I'm like 30 years. I've been at this a long time now. It just feels like I still can't believe that. So there's a few things. There's 3 things that I actually focus on to do. One is I remember how much worse it could be if my ancestors hadn't done the work that they did. And so there is this gosh, people are like, it's so terrible right now. Well, I'm listening to a book about Lincoln and before the Civil War right now, Eric Larson's book, and I'm like, the parallels he makes, I'm like, yeah, it's been terrible a lot, and yes, it is bad. But how much worse it would be if my ancestors, my grandparents, weren't fighting it for labor in the fields and weren't, as part of their church. And so there's encouragement for me to do that for the next group, like who are going to look at me, my kids, if there are, that generation next. So that's one, is that I reflect on what other folks have done. The second thing that I really try to do is I don't chase martyrdom. My life is not about is not about the sacrifice. I'm not defined by the sacrifices I make or could make. I'm defined by how I help move people and things forward as part of a small moment in time. When we were talking with Palestinians, they're like, this may not even happen in my children's lifetime, what they're thinking about. And I'm like, when you have that perspective, so that's the second piece. And then for me, the third piece is I try to find that great tension between self-care and abdication. Like, I just feel like sometimes we fall into that self-care thing and it's just, I don't want to do anything anymore. And sometimes we really need it because it helps us sustain. Because if we just go, we will all burn out and become like bitter. Like, we all know those, or we've been in those spaces. And I don't want to be that person. I want to proceed in this work of justice with joy and kindness, and not see it as a weakness or the sacrifice that I have to make for my family or my health or whatever. So I was sharing you earlier before, I go to the movies by myself. I make sure that I do these things that tend to my soul so that I can come back and be that much better for shorter, intense periods of time, rather than just to feel like I got to be on all the time. And so, I think it fights that toxic productivity culture that you're always on. And if we don't do it, who are leaders in the church, really model for folks that we've got to tend to yourself, then, the church doesn't love us back. Our jobs don't love us back. We have to model that for folks. And so I think that, I'm really committed to that for myself and for others.
We definitely all need that. It's a shift in perspective of realizing, there's a lot of crises. And if we try to solve everything, we're actually just going to be, organizing a lot of meetings with a lot of things that need to get done, but are we actually going to do any of them? And it's like, no, where can I actually make an impact and a dent and go deep, knowing that the work's going to continue? And luckily I'm not the savior who has to solve every problem, but I can contribute a part with what I have available.
Yes, and your contribution is really predicated on what Bruce said about centering your wellness. And I think many of us in the justice space, in the church space, or in those spaces that, intersect, are so conditioned or used to pouring out. And I had a friend who's a church person, but who's also a coach, say to me, for those of you serving the church, you're the most important person in the building. And I was like, no,
I can't be that.
Yeah, exactly. But she said, but think about it. If you're not grounded, if you're not rested, if you're not joyful, she said, all of that's vibrating out with the people that you're serving amongst. Yeah. And I've just been sitting with it. And I think, Bruce, what you said is so spot on. We can't do this work from a place of bitterness and exhaustion. Yeah.
Well, when I meet with people and you would say something like that with somebody, like, I want my first inclination of folks I work with to be like, no, I don't, that would center me too much. It becomes dangerous, though, like if that person said that to you and like, well, yes, I am the most important person, right? Right. But to have that inclination of like, I can't be, to challenge us to actually own our role, I think is really important for folks. Yeah. I would say one of the other things about the Romans passage that I don't actually include when we read it, but I'll mention it on Sunday, is that at the end of the day, it's God's job, right? That there's that part right afterwards. It's like, God will heap coals upon them should that need to happen. Like, it is not your job. Your job is to not repay evil with evil. And should these things need to happen, and that's everything, right? That's just throughout our theological space, right? It's God's job. And we try to align ourselves with God's intentions for the world, and we hope we're right more than we're not. And in that case, that's one of the ways when I get too caught up in like, I need to do all of this, otherwise things will not, then I'm like, but God can handle this. Like, this, God will handle this without me. Maybe even things will happen better without me. And the more I overpromise to do things, the worse it is. So I'm just going to commit to what I know I can do and can have energy to do, and do that, and all things will fall out, we hope.
Yeah.
And then go to the movies.
Yes. Yeah. By yourself. That is crucial. Go to the movies by yourself. Like, I tell pastors all the time, if you're not taking advantage of your pastoral schedule, you have made a terrible decision. Like, I haven't been to Costco on the weekend in years. Like, why would I? Like, why would I, right? So go to a movie by yourself because you can.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So you will be coming into the pulpit, and we're going to hear what this all turns into. But can you give us like just a glimpse of the process? How do you put a sermon together? Is going to Palestine an essential step for sermon writing for you every time you preach?
You can only do a good sermon if you've gone to a place that is that the United States has said don't go to. Yeah, that's for me. So I'll make some admissions. So I'm a lazy preacher preparer because for my entire call, that is something that has been natural to me. Like I was always one of those people that you could give me a passage and I'm always focused on what's happening in the world and knew enough of my Bible that I could do something. The last few years, I've really tried to hone what I think is a good gift, because I think too often we ignore the things we're good at because we can just kind of do them. And I've really tried to, in the last few years in particular, focus more on what I'm good at, get better at that, and stop trying to get better at the things that I'm naturally don't give me joy and I'm not good at. And so preaching for me has been, especially recently, has been a lot about what's happening. I want folks, when they walk away, to feel like if they weren't there, they would have missed something. And that folks would have felt like there's something about this third space we've gathered in that has moved us together. And it's not that Bruce has the answer, but it's helped to open up something that maybe I had thought about, challenged me, but loves me. And that's the kind of the experience I want folks to have when we're sharing this kind of pulpit space together. And I'll tell a couple stories at the beginning of just like, it's always weird when it's really one person talking to everybody else, but like that, and we talk about a conversation, but so I'll talk a little bit about that I really do think it's this interactive conversational experience that we have together that I really try to honor through our time, so that folks will walk away, I hope, with something to think about and actions to take, that it will change the way we move through the world. That if we believe in this Jesus who calls us into radical kindness and love and justice, and we've committed to follow this person, this teaching, into death and ultimately resurrection, then that matters. And so the way we live has to matter. And that's my punchline. That's my Twitter thing, is that if you're following Jesus, it has to matter. It changes the way you live in the world. And if it doesn't, then we dishonor that whole commitment. And it doesn't
just change the way I think about the world. It's not just living in my head. Damn it.
Yes, exactly. It doesn't just change what you put on your story. That's a part of it. But yeah. But if it doesn't change the way you move through, like the way you just travel through the grocery store or drive down the street, as well as these major kinds of things, then what are we doing? And it's exhausting and it's terrible sometimes, but yet, that we participate in the resurrection, and that's kind of, we have to participate somehow.
Whew. So, just a sermon, no big deal. Right. Well, it is going to be a good one, and luckily there will be space for a bit of that conversation. Maybe not during the time when you're standing in the pulpit, but following worship there'll be a sermon talkback, so congregants both in the nave and online can have a bit of time to chat and engage with the sermon we heard, all the things that come out of these conversations and spaces. And if you're in the building at Riverside this Sunday, we'll even have copies of the book, so you can pick up a copy and get Bruce's autograph somewhere in here. Mine is unsigned. Thanks, Bruce. And we will enjoy our time with Bruce Reyes-Chow this Sunday. So be sure to join us all things Sunday at Riverside. Go to our website, trcnyc.org, to find out all things about all these things and more. And then the following week, we're back with the Lord's Prayer again. So that's coming up with one of our ministers, Reverend Jabe Zeno. So good stuff in these upcoming weeks. Leave a comment. Let us know your questions, comments, snide remarks, anything you're thinking or feeling, and we hope to see you this Sunday. And okay, not the snide remarks. I saw that look. Okay, see you on Sunday or whenever, wherever we do.
Snide remarks. No snide remarks, please.
No snide remarks. Unless they're super clever. I can appreciate like super clever snark, but if you're like just forwarding somebody else's, like at least be original. Okay. Like, there you go. Yeah.
Don't phone it in. All right.